Lina was a teenager, with an active imagination and a heart full of dreams. Living in a small town nestled amidst rolling hills, her days were often a blend of schoolwork, long walks, and moments spent sketching or writing in her journal. But beneath her carefree exterior was a sense of compassion that had always set her apart from others her age. One chilly afternoon, as Lina made her way home from school, she passed the familiar alley that ran parallel to her neighborhood. The snow had fallen heavily the previous night, blanketing the town in a serene white stillness. The air was sharp, and her breath came out in soft puffs as she clutched her scarf tighter. She wasn't in a hurry. She enjoyed taking this quiet route, where her thoughts seemed to flow more freely. As she neared the alley's end, something unusual caught her attention. A faint sound, a weak, pitiful cry, carried through the air. She stopped in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat. The sound wasn't human, but it was filled with such desperation that she couldn't ignore it. Curiosity and concern led her to follow the sound to its source. As she turned into a narrow, snow-covered path between two buildings, her eyes fell upon a small pile of trash bags near an overflowing bin. There, barely visible against the harsh white of the snow, was a tiny, shivering kitten. The kitten was no more than a few weeks old, its fur matted and its eyes dull with exhaustion. It was struggling to stay upright, its tiny frame trembling against the freezing wind. Lina's heart broke at the sight. She knelt down, her hands trembling as she carefully scooped up the fragile creature. The kitten's body was icy cold, its breath shallow. "You poor thing," Lina whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "What are you doing out here all alone?" She didn't hesitate. Wrapping the kitten in her scarf, she cradled it close to her chest, hoping to share her body heat. As she stood up, the gravity of the situation hit her. This little life was on the brink of death, and she was the only one who could save it. When Lina arrived home, her mind raced with worry. Her parents had always been strict about not allowing pets in the house. "They're too much responsibility," her father often said. "We don't have the time or space for animals." She knew they wouldn't approve of her bringing the kitten inside, but this wasn't about rules. It was about saving a life. She made a quick decision to hide the kitten in the backyard shed, where it would at least be shielded from the cold. Inside the shed, she found an old towel and a cardboard box, which she lined to create a makeshift bed. The kitten was still unresponsive, and Lina's anxiety grew. She ran back inside the house, grabbed a small bottle of milk from the fridge, and carefully warmed it. Using a teaspoon, she fed the kitten tiny drops of milk, her hands trembling as she prayed it would be enough to sustain it. Gradually, the kitten began to stir, its eyes fluttering open. Lina felt a surge of relief as it let out a faint, raspy meow. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, stroking its damp fur. "I'll take care of you." Over the next few days, Lina devoted herself to nursing the kitten back to health. She named him Snowy, inspired by his pure white fur that had begun to shine as he regained his strength. Each morning, she would wake up early to check on him, ensuring he was warm and fed before heading to school. In the afternoon, she would sneak into the shed to spend time with him, stroking his fur and talking to him as if he could understand her every word. Snowy seemed to thrive under her care, his playful nature emerging as he grew stronger. He would pounce on her fingers, bat at the hem of her coat, and curl up in her lap, purring softly. Despite the joy Snowy brought her, Lina couldn't shake the worry that her parents would discover him. She tried to be as discreet as possible, but one evening, her father found her in the shed. His expression shifted from confusion to disapproval as he noticed the small, furry figure nestled in her lap. "Lina," he said sternly, "what is this?" She hesitated, her heart pounding. "Dad, I found him in the trash. He was freezing and I couldn't just leave him there. I've been taking care of him and he's doing so much better now." Her father sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I understand why you did it, Lina, but we've talked about this. We can't have pets. It's not practical." Her mother joined them, echoing her father's sentiments but softening the blow with a kind smile. "You've done a good thing, sweetheart, but now that he's healthy, it's time to find him a proper home." Lina fought back tears as she nodded, knowing she couldn't argue. She spent the next few days building a small outdoor shelter for Snowy at the edge of their backyard, ensuring he had a safe place to stay until she could find a permanent home for him. One morning, as Lina went to check on Snowy, her heart sank. The little shelter was empty. Snowy was gone. She called out for him, searched the yard, and even wandered through the neighborhood, but there was no sign of him. For weeks, she felt an ache in her chest every time she thought about him. She missed his playful antics, his soft purrs, and the way he would nuzzle against her hand. Slowly, she tried to move on, but a part of her always wondered what had become of the kitten she had saved. What Lena didn't realize was that Snowy's departure wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning of a bond that would come full circle in ways she could never have imagined. Years passed, and Lena's life changed in ways she could never have anticipated. The once carefree teenager was now a young woman, navigating the complexities of adulthood. Her high school days of rescuing stray kittens and dreaming of adventures had given way to the responsibilities of work, relationships, and planning her future. Despite the passage of time, her memories of Snowy lingered. She often found herself wondering about the little white cat she had once saved, imagining him thriving somewhere, though she never expected to see him again. Lena met Michael, her boyfriend, during her college years. Their relationship blossomed, and before long, they were planning a life together. When Lena discovered she was pregnant, the news filled her with a mix of joy and nervous anticipation. Michael, ever supportive, promised to be by her side every step of the way. They decided to marry, but as Lena's due date approached, the challenges of pregnancy began to weigh on her. One cold Christmas Eve, Michael had gone to the store to pick up some last-minute groceries while Lena rested at home. The festive atmosphere outside was palpable. Twinkling lights adorned every house, and the sound of carolers echoed faintly in the distance. Lena, however, was far from feeling festive. Her pregnancy had been physically taxing, and tonight she felt particularly exhausted. As the evening wore on, a sudden sharp pain coursed through her body, taking her breath away. She clutched her stomach, realizing with a jolt that her labor had begun. Panic set in as she tried to gather her thoughts. Her phone was upstairs and she didn't have the strength to climb the stairs to reach it. She called out for help, but the house was empty, and the neighbors were too far away to hear her cries. The minutes felt like hours as Lena struggled to remain calm. The pain intensified, and she knew she needed help immediately. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered a desperate prayer, pleading for someone, anyone, to come to her aid. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a soft scratching sound at the window caught her attention. She turned her head, her vision blurred by tears, and saw a familiar figure perched on the windowsill. It was a cat, a white cat. For a moment she thought she was hallucinating, but as the cat leaped gracefully into the room, her breath caught in her throat. "Snowy?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The cat's piercing blue eyes met hers, and in that instant she knew it was him. Snowy had returned as if guided by some unseen force. Lena's mind raced with disbelief and gratitude, but there was no time to dwell on the miracle of his appearance. She needed help, and Snowy seemed to sense the urgency of the situation. Without hesitation, Snowy darted back out the window, disappearing into the frosty night. Lena watched him go, her heart pounding with both hope and fear. Would he be able to find help? Could a cat possibly understand the gravity of her situation? Snowy moved with determination, his agile body navigating the snowy streets with ease. Despite the years that had passed, he seemed to remember the kindness Lena had shown him and was now determined to repay her in kind. He sniffed the air, his keen senses guiding him as he searched for signs of life. Not far from Lena's house, two elderly women sat on their porch, bundled up in thick coats as they sipped hot cocoa. They were enjoying the quiet beauty of the night, their laughter a soft melody against the backdrop of the holiday celebrations. Snowy approached them, his meows urgent and insistent. At first, the women exchanged puzzled glances. "What's wrong with this little guy?" one of them murmured, bending down to get a closer look. Snowy darted back a few steps, then turned and looked over his shoulder, as if urging them to follow. The women, both animal lovers, quickly understood that the cat was trying to lead them somewhere. They set down their mugs and followed Snowy as he trotted purposefully down the street. When they arrived at Lena's house, the women immediately recognized the urgency of the situation. They found her doubled over in pain, her face pale and her breath shallow. One of them called for an ambulance while the other stayed by Lena's side, offering words of comfort and reassurance. The ambulance arrived just in time, and the paramedics swiftly prepared Lena for transport. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, Lena glanced around, searching for Snowy. She caught a glimpse of him sitting on the porch, his blue eyes watching her intently. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Snowy remained still, his posture regal and calm, as if to say, "You're welcome." That night, Lena gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The delivery was a success, and both mother and child were safe. When her family arrived at the hospital, Lena recounted the incredible events that had led to her rescue. Her parents, Michael, and even the doctors listened in awe as she described how Snowy had returned to save her life. "It's him," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "The same cat I saved all those years ago. He came back for me." The two elderly women corroborated her story, adding their own amazement at the cat's intelligence and determination. Michael, though initially skeptical, couldn't deny the evidence before him. He wrapped his arms around Lena, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You saved him, and he saved you," he said softly. "It's like fate brought him back to you." Snowy became a permanent member of their family, earning a special place in their hearts. Lena's parents, who had once forbidden pets, welcomed him with open arms, their regret over their past decision overshadowed by their gratitude for his heroic actions. Snowy, ever loyal and affectionate, seemed to understand that he was now part of a family that loved him deeply. As Lena held her newborn son in her arms, she glanced at Snowy, who was curled up at the foot of her hospital bed. "Your name is Max," she said softly to her son, "but your middle name will be Snow, in honor of the friend who brought us together." Snowy let out a soft purr, as if in agreement, and Lena knew that their bond was something truly extraordinary, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have profound, life-changing consequences. Snowy's miraculous return not only saved Lena but marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one filled with renewed faith, compassion, and gratitude. Lena's family gathered at her hospital bedside that night, marveling at the story of her rescue. Each retelling seemed to deepen their astonishment, weaving Snowy's presence into their lives as a symbol of hope and connection. Her father, who had once scolded her for bringing the stray cat home years ago, now found himself holding Snowy in his lap, stroking his soft fur. "It's amazing," he murmured, almost to himself. "I've always believed in being kind to others, but I never thought a cat could understand gratitude like this." Her mother, who had been more practical and hesitant about keeping pets, now wiped away tears as she whispered, "We owe him everything, Lena. He's not just a pet, he's family." Snowy, as if understanding every word, sat perched at the foot of Lena's hospital bed, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room. He seemed to acknowledge the love and gratitude being directed his way, but he remained humble, as if to say, "I only did what was right." The days that followed Snowy's heroic act were transformative for Lena and her family. The cat's presence brought a newfound closeness among them. Where once there had been occasional arguments or misunderstandings, there was now a shared sense of purpose and connection. Snowy had reminded them all of the importance of love and kindness, not just to each other but to all living beings. Lena's son Max was particularly fascinated by Snowy. The baby's small hands would often reach out for the cat, who would patiently allow himself to be petted, purring softly. As Max grew older, his bond with Snowy deepened. The two became inseparable companions, exploring the backyard together, napping side by side, and sharing quiet moments of understanding that only they could fully comprehend. For Lena, Snowy became a source of comfort and inspiration. She began to see his rescue not just as a miracle, but as a testament to the power of kindness and the interconnectedness of all life. This realization led her to start volunteering at local animal shelters, where she shared her story with anyone who would listen. One day, while Lena was speaking at a community event about the importance of rescuing animals, a journalist approached her, intrigued by her story. "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" he asked. The idea hadn't occurred to her, but the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She wanted the world to know about Snowy's incredible journey and the lessons it had taught her. Over the next year, Lena poured her heart into writing a memoir titled The Snowy Miracle: How a Little Kindness Can Change the World. The book was a hit, resonating with readers who were moved by the themes of compassion, gratitude, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. Proceeds from the book went to support animal shelters and rescue organizations, fulfilling Lena's dream of making a lasting impact. Meanwhile, Snowy's story continued to inspire. A local artist painted a portrait of him, capturing the regal beauty of his white fur and striking blue eyes. The painting was displayed at a community centre, drawing visitors who wanted to learn more about the cat who had saved a life. But Snowy himself remained unchanged by the attention. He was content to stay by Lena's side, living out his days surrounded by love and warmth. His loyalty never wavered, and his presence became a constant reminder of the miracle that had brought him back into Lena's life. As Max grew older, he began to understand the full extent of Snowy's role in his and his mother's lives. The story of his birth and Snowy's heroic actions became a cherished family legend, told and retold at gatherings and celebrations. Max often introduced Snowy to his friends, proudly sharing the tale of how his family had been saved by a cat. When Max turned 8, he wrote his first school essay about Snowy, earning him accolades from his teacher and classmates. "My cat Snowy is not just a pet," he wrote. "He's a hero, and I want to be just like him someday." As the years passed, Lena's life flourished. Her family grew stronger, her book continued to inspire, and Snowy remained a beloved companion. On quiet evenings, Lena often sat by the window with Snowy curled up in her lap, reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. She marveled at the chain of events that had led to their miraculous reunion, understanding that life's greatest blessings often come in unexpected forms. "Thank you, Snowy," she would whisper, her voice filled with love, "for everything." And Snowy, ever wise and watchful, would simply purr in response, a sound that spoke of gratitude, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond they shared. Snowy lived a long and fulfilling life, surrounded by love and warmth. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep one autumn morning, the family was heartbroken, but grateful for the years they had shared with him. To honor Snowy's memory, Lena and Max established a foundation in his name to support animal rescue efforts and promote kindness. They called it Snowy's Legacy, a fitting tribute to the cat who had brought so much light into their lives. Max, now a successful filmmaker, created a documentary about Snowy's life and the impact he had on their family. The film won several awards, touching audiences worldwide with its message of hope and compassion. Lena often visited Snowy's favorite spot in the backyard, where they had placed a small memorial stone engraved with the words, "In loving memory of Snowy, our miracle, our family, our hero." Even years later, whenever Lena thought of Snowy, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. His story had become a part of their family's legacy, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples that change lives forever.